Welcome to our session. Today we are going to talk about how do you deliver excellence with FBM products. As we know, FBM is definitely a great resource, but I love that I have a relationship with great sellers who have agreed to be on the panel with me, as well as one of my colleagues. I'm going to go ahead and start with myself. My name is Cheryl Ruffin, and I am the Senior Account Executive for Fulfilled by Merchant. Today I have the pleasure of welcoming three other folks who are going to talk us through this great conversation. I'm going to start with Anthony. Anthony, could you introduce yourself?
Sure, thanks for having me, Cheryl. Anthony Boguski from Hearthshire. I'm the Chief Operating Officer of the company. We're a major home improvement supplier and reseller. We're nearly 20 years on the platform. We have 10 U.S. distribution centers and ship thousands of parcels daily.
Hi.
Fabi?
Yes, hi. My name is Fabiola Carter. I'm the Senior Director of Operations and Channel for Consumer Markets Simply Medical. It's our seller, and our parent company is McKesson Medical Surgical. Simply Medical has been selling on Amazon for the last 6 years. We have around 15 DCs that we use for it, and our current usage of FBM is around 85%.
All right.
Yeah. Hello, my name is Ashwin Olapalli. I am a product manager whose team owns Seller Fulfilled Prime, manager orders, and seller performance. I've been at Amazon now just over 11 years, worked part-time for some time in the selling space, but also in ads and also in fulfillment. So a mix of experiences at Amazon.
Thank you. I appreciate each of you for introducing yourselves. And I want to just kind of cover the agenda, because I think it's going to be a great conversation for us today. We're going to talk about setting foundation for growth. That's always important as you scale your business. Systems and automation for scaling. We're going to discuss that, as well as how do you build and train your teams when you're scaling for growth. As well, how can we look at ensuring successful performance and metrics at scale? And then last but not least, how do you manage holiday season and volume spikes? I know that's top of mind for everyone right now, including Amazon. So with that being said, we're going to go ahead and get right into it. So I'm going to start with you, Fabi. I have a couple of questions, but I want to talk about when did you know that you had some operational challenges that were critical because you were scaling for growth, and how did you maintain your account health during that time?
Sure. So we started in 2019, and what the products that we sell are medical supplies. So in 2020, COVID happened, and we sell medical supplies. So we started dealing with supply chain disruptions, panic buying, and a heightened sense of urgency from the customer to receive their products on time. So we knew that was a critical time, that it was going to be a make or break for us. So how do we do that? We basically decided how to deal with the panic buying and the supply chain disruption is we automated our shipping templates, and we made good use of premium shipping orders and fulfillment and the basic FBM. And what we did is we automated that with our inventory feeds. So if we had plenty of inventory and we were able to deliver, but if we started selling through those, then we will slow down the velocity and therefore slow down the demand, and also give the customers a fair estimate of what they needed to, when they were going to receive their order. We also built a fail-safe. If something were to break, we were able to turn it off or slow down significantly, so we will have time to recover for any issues that we would have.
That makes total sense. But a question that I have, what was some of the key things that pointed toward the indicators that you didn't have the right systems in place to support that growth? Because I think that's really something we see at Amazon. I know for me, I have a ton of conversations with sellers like, I'm really growing, but I have a lot of challenges here and I need to do something else. When did you recognize that that was the point for you all?
So basically, when you're selling, when you start having a higher number of order defects, that's when you need to make a change. And so generally when that happens, what we do is we identify what's the issue, we back off from that issue, And then we keep like having our team that launches our products, the customer service. We keep managing what works, and then we have our operations team that will start focusing on those issues, solving them, and then it continues.
Yeah, that really opens up another question. When you looked at those changes, which investments in tools that you kind of looked at that you felt like was going to have the highest impact for your scaling at that time?
In addition to automating those shipping templates, we also automated the logic of our inventory buffers. I think you are familiar with panic buying, increased spikes, and we just needed to be able to not oversell.
Got it. Thank you so much for that. And Anthony, I have a question for you. When you kind of looked at scaling your growth, did you kind of look at which automated tools would be most impactful or effective during that time and ensuring that you maintain, good account health?
Sure.
Performance?
Yeah, I think you have to look at the whole organization when you're looking at automation. It's not just, tools provided by Amazon as well. So for us, we've implemented automation throughout our whole process, from efficiencies in pick, pack, and ship to data teams utilizing by shipping or shipping settings automation, automated handling time, and of course my favorite, multi-location inventory.
I laugh about that because Anthony told me something I found fascinating. What did you tell me about MLI at the time once you actually put it in place?
I said it changed my life and not just my career. It's the single greatest thing that's happened. So for us, when if you have multiple locations, especially more than just a handful, previously before MLI, multi-location inventory, all of your inventory was in one pool, and even though it's spread throughout the country, now we know what's in our facilities, but we were now able to tell Amazon where our inventory is, and obviously it can affect ship time, ship promises, on-time delivery. So if you have multiple locations that you're not using multi-location inventory, you should be.
He even sold me, and I don't even have a warehouse. So with that being said, I think that's amazing. But how did you prioritize those processes for automation?
Well, I think, you have to expect the unexpected. Someone told me that years ago, probably 15 years ago, is to, especially in this business, I think you really need to, again, expect the unexpected. For instance, if anyone's ever launched a new ERP or a new platform, I've never heard of one ever go smooth in any company. So you have to plan for failures and create SOPs of actionable items. And also, to Fabiola's point, is having a fail-safe, having a mechanism to stop the bleed, if you will.
Absolutely.
Yeah, really great point, because we all know that nothing goes 100% perfect all the time. So you really have to think about what is that plan. But I would like to ask you, when you were implementing these automated tools or processes, whether they were internally or you were using FBM tools, how did you overcome those challenges?
Well, I think it's, number one, your team, right? It's, again, putting your blood, sweat, and tears into the business. For us, it's different stages, right? So for 20 years, where we've started to where we are today, it's the same process. It's just larger. And in implementing that with your team as well, and ensuring that you have proper SOPs, expecting the unexpected.
But how did you really develop those? I know that that's a loaded question, but when you look at developing those SOPs and training your teams to be effective, what were some priorities there for you when you developed those? I can ask Fabia that as well.
Sure, I can take that. So our team is very passionate into really deep diving on what are the causes of those order defects, more than probably any of us ever wanted to. And so when we do that, we try to understand what is the source of the issue. Is it one of our products that we're selling? Is it a process? Is it one of the services that we're offering? And once we pinpoint the issue, what we do is we back off from that root cause. We back off, and then what works, we realize what works, what actually makes our metrics better. So the SOPs are developed based on what works. And so that's what we give our team, that in order to sell more, in order to handle customer service. But at the same time, again, the operations team will start working on those defects and work with different stakeholders, different departments, try to solve for those issues. And once they work, we test. Once they work, then we incorporate those into the SOPs.
Yeah, and that's very great that you approached it that way. And when I think about any type of team numbers, no matter what kind of business you're in, you definitely have to take in account metrics. So when you looked at setting those SOPs in place, what type of metrics that you kind of align to a performance, to make sure that now, because if you think about it, you're scaling, and we talked about automated processes, we talked about your way that you're gauging those gaps that you have from your growth. Now that you have your team effectively trained, what metrics did you kind of use, key performance indicators, to say, we have to stay aligned with this? Anthony or?
Yeah, I mean, to Fabiola's point, I think it's not, obviously looking at your metric, but more importantly, looking at your metric failures. So, if you're failing in an area and you're scaling your team, those are the areas you should be focusing on first, if you're trying to maintain near perfect metrics. And then also having the Amazon allows you to test these things on a very small scale. You don't have to, I don't know, we have 100,000 SKUs, but if you have 100 SKUs, try it with 2 SKUs. If it's not working, back out of it as well. So I think, and then around that is also planning for your expected growth, and then what volume are you anticipating?
Absolutely. Ashwin, what would be some things that you would tell sellers if you had to, from an Amazon standpoint, that you would recommend when they're thinking about those metrics and training the team effectively to address those?
Yeah, so I think it's key. Like, we have metrics that go across your entire, metrics that measure performance of the warehouse, carrier performance, really breaking down some of those metrics to understand how am I looking at it by warehouse, by SKU. The data is there, just looking through those to identify what your main problem is and identifying it early. So I'll give a very quick example. I've spoken to sellers many times over the years where they confirm ship and send packages out the door, but the first scan from the carrier, maybe the carrier hub close to them is having an issue, the first scan is late. But what they don't realize is that even if it's late by 5 hours, they deliver the next day, which means OTDR is impacted. And they're trying to piece it together to figure out what happened. I gave it out on time, but then why is it delivered late? So really understanding all the segments and looking at those metrics, and then looking at, I think Fabiola and Anthony covered some of the tools, which tools work for you to address them, or do you have to do something different? So I think those things are really key, is just breaking down the metrics by segment and trying to identify what is the root cause of my issue versus looking at just an output metric.
I think as well to that, if I can just interject a second, is ensuring your team's looking at those same signals as well. So as a leader, you could be looking at it, but when you're talking about training, to ensure that the team members responsible are looking at the same signals as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, Anthony, that's really key. And one thing that you brought up that kind of had me thinking, as you learn to gauge how to do that really well, making sure that you know that we have great resources like shipping settings automation, automated handling time, Amazon by shipping. When you have all 3 of those with your non-standard orders, then your account health is protected. And that's what I encourage sellers that I interact with. So thank you all for bringing up those great points there. The next thing I want to look at is, how do you ensure those performance metrics at scale? And one thing that I want to dive a little bit deeper into, how do you maintain same-day shipping, right? Perfect or near-perfect account health metrics, and then also ensure with thousands of orders going out daily. Now, we talked a little bit about how do you safeguard that, but what did you do as you grew your business? And I'll start off with you, Anthony.
Yeah, I mean, I think the most important thing for us is being nimble and agile while we're executing. So the same process, if if you will, from 20 years ago of being nimble and agile in the space is true today. It's just on a larger scale. So for us, there's many folks on our team, including myself personally, that are glued to our performance and our processes. You know, and an example of that would be monitoring, if you're not operating on the weekends, monitoring your weekend volume so that you know Monday morning that staffing's, you know, what time you're starting, what your carrier pickups are, and how much volume you have, for instance, on that Monday morning if you're not operating on the weekends.
Absolutely. Fabi, what about you?
So for us, you know, like we currently have SFP and it has been really great for us. But we actually are very vigilant about it. So even though, like Amazon, like you hold us to like weekly performance metrics and weekly speed delivery metrics, we actually have daily expectations of what those metrics ought to be, so we can make the week. You know, like so we are looking at those, you know, like every day and realizing, like again, what is failing. You know, like it may be that we chose an item, you know, like to be an SFP, and we learned that that item is not good on SFP. And still, I think that's something that for us, it took us a while to realize not every item is going to be good for like that fast delivery promise that you have.
Absolutely. And I think one of the key things and conversations I have with many sellers about SFP is a superior product. You know, when you think about when you deliver Prime, those expectations from end users are high. Our expectations for Seller Fulfilled Prime is high, mainly because when we look at Prime, we have expectations aligned with those, so it's very critical that we meet those from a performance, but also with pleasing and delighting all of our customers. So great point that you brought up. With that being said, what systems that you kind of use to circumvent potential issues, though?
Yeah. So I can continue on the SFP side. So we have like text alerts, we have email alerts, we have daily reports. And so, for example, SFP, you know, like weather, you know, like this past winter, there were like several snowstorms that were affecting us in different regions to the point that, you know, like our carrier was not delivering, carrier was not picking up, you know, like, or our employees couldn't get to the DC, you know. So it's a lot of coordination and it's a lot of communication, you know, like on when we need to shut down a service, and when we need to come back, you know, like sooner or later. Like it's, at the end of the day, it's a lot more important to meet your metrics than save the sales for the day.
Sure. Yeah, a point to add to that, you know, you talked about carriers in the wintertime, or, you know, even carriers at high volume. That's something you need to think about well before the issue. You need to have SOPs or plan of action with your carriers well in advance. You know, for instance, if it's 4 o'clock on a Monday and you have 500 packages going out and the carrier blows a tire.
Yeah.
What are you going to do? Do you have a plan? Do you have a contact? Do you have an SOP, an emergency procedure? That's something that I think you have to plan for to be able to execute.
That's definitely something that we all should be aware of, because things do happen, right? No matter how great you plan, so what's the plan for the plan that didn't work? And I think whether it's Amazon, whether it's any seller, we all have to do that. But when your metrics drop, and sometimes I know everybody in this room probably wakes up in the morning and say, oh, what does that look like? What were some things that you put into place to kind of fill that gap or understand this is what happened, this is what we don't want to happen again?
Right. You know, I think, you know, a lot of what we've done over the years, and probably a lot of folks that sell on platform, it's a lot of trial and error, right? You know, especially in the early days, but even now. So, you know, I think don't be afraid to try a new process, right? You know, the harder step's the first step. And again, Amazon allows you don't have to put your whole catalog into these programs. And I think there's protections in these programs that Amazon has that helps negate some of these issues, but you don't have to put, again, your whole entire catalog in there. Yep. And you can back out. If it's not working, you can back out of it.
Absolutely. Ashwin, what would you say around these processes and being able to, you know, look at your gaps when the metrics drop?
Yeah, so again, going back to what both Anthony and Fabiola said, once you understand where your issues are and what might be potential problems, there are tools available. Now, every capability, product or tool or solution doesn't work for everyone all the time. So really understanding what combination works. So for example, handling time. You know, managing how you ship out on time. There are options to set a default for your account. There are options to set a SKU level override. So if there's certain SKUs that you know are going to take more time and could impact your metrics or could spike, would I adjust handling on that? There is automated handling time. There are order handling capacity. So really sort of looking through the list of capabilities and identifying what combination best suits your needs. And not just, I think Anthony hit a very good point, not just every day, but also those peak periods as well, planning in advance for that. Like we do send out some tips before the holiday seasons, just really thinking about some of that at different times will ensure that you protect yourself and set the right guardrails from a performance standpoint.
Talking about those protections, like we talk about the snowstorms, and at the time, by shipping was not mandatory. Like even today, it's not mandatory for SFP. However, if you use it, you are protected. If you deliver it to the carrier on time, the carrier can take a lot longer, but you are protected if you're using by shipping. So that's something that we definitely take advantage. I mean, we like that insurance.
Yeah, for sure. And those are key things that we would encourage sellers to use. They're in place for that, especially when you're scaling. So great points here when we look at that, because when you think of SFP, premium shipping options, if you're using shipping settings automation and you're using by shipping, your account health is protected. And so those are key things. Thank you for bringing that up, because I think, and Anthony, what I love that you brought into play, so many sellers are thinking, I got to put my whole catalog in here. What's going to happen if it goes off the rails? And you can dip your toe in it. We actually recommend that. When you're looking at doing, changes and processes, and you talk about pulling out trial and error, you actually can just put a few ASINs or SKUs in there and see how it works for you. If you want to scale it and grow, and it's for you, great. But if it's not, then you get to kind of review how that works. So that was a really great point from both of you when we talk about that. And Ashwin, you brought up a great point. Now, not only during regular times, but let's talk about peak season. We're all about to come up on that right now. And I know for me, even being invested as a partner with my sellers, I want to make sure that peak season is the biggest, the brightest, all the way from Amazon to our sellers to our end users. So we're going to have a conversation around how do you prepare for that? How do you manage the holiday rush when volume spikes and you have order surges and all of these things are happening? And then we talk about the unfortunates that do happen. We have in our supply chain, we have a lot of moving pieces. So occasionally something falls. And how do you prepare for that when it does happen? How do you do that?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for peak for us is inventory forecast and demand planning. That's, I think, 101. And that doesn't start, the week before peak. Frankly, as soon as peak's over, we're planning next year's peak. So with that is knowing your own capacity, right, and your staffing needs, but also carrier outputs. Just because you can handle the volume, can your local carrier handle it? It's possible that they can't, and then what? So planning that well in advance, having the conversations well in advance, and I know I said expect the unexpected, but I'll give another one. Expect the worst and prepare accordingly. I think that's how we navigate peak, and planning for the worst, and if it's nowhere close to that, we're doing pretty good. And I think that mindset, if you put that into your leadership team as well, can be effective.
Great point. Fabi?
I would say planning for inventory is key, and always planning for a little bit more of inventory is key. Because you can have your capacity, well planned, you can communicate, you can have your carriers, but if the product really takes off and you oversell, that's going to be an issue. So that also really matters. And also, promise what you can deliver. I think a lot of times we feel the pressure that we have to participate in every, in every holiday event. We love Prime Days, happy with the weekdays, we're open. But when you think about Thanksgiving and Black Friday, those days our DCs are closed. So we're not going to be offering SFP those days because they're closed.
Yeah, very true. And Ashwin, what would you say when you're thinking about, even from our side of the house at Amazon, but when you're recommending to sellers to prepare for peak and those order surges, what you recommend?
Yeah, so Anthony and Port Fabiola so happened to mention about looking across where the problems are. There are metrics that you can leverage that gives you early signals, right? For example, one of the things you're worried about often is, am I going to deliver on time if, say, carriers are having issues or there's volume spikes? I'll give you an example. You could look at ship confirmation as a signal, and within your warehouse, if you start seeing that on average, off-peak ship confirmation used to happen at X time, and suddenly that's starting to push the boundaries of when it needs to get done, that's a signal early before you're waiting for a package to be delivered late. Same thing from a carrier perspective. Are the carriers scanning on time? Like, are they scanning their first scan that they received the shipment? On average, if it's at 7 a.m. the next day, and suddenly you're seeing it now at noon and pushing till afternoon, there's an issue. That's a signal very quickly. So I think developing some of these early signals will ensure that you're not waiting till packages are delivered and then you're starting to see, my on-time delivery is late, and how do I address that? So setting up some of these early signals to know just on average what has changed and when do I need to just step in, I think is also key.
Ashwin, that's probably one of the biggest hidden metrics that we need to track. Carriers are all about timestamps, right? And so you have the timestamp of when you put a shipping label, that tracking number that is sent to the marketplace, and you say I'm good. But the next one, which is the manifest that they took, if that didn't happen, that's a late shipment.
Yep.
And that probably gets overlooked even, and that's the one you guys are measuring us on. Yeah.
I think a point to that too is, about early signals. So obviously we want to be as proactive as possible, but when you see an early signal, you have to be as reactive as quickly as possible. So for instance, in your center, you're tracking it the next day, ship confirmation, there's no movement.
Yep.
Having that relationship with your carriers that maybe they forgot a trailer in the yard. I think the moral of the whole piece is as small or large, we're all going to experience an issue at one point or another, but it's how you react to that or how much preparation has you put in SOPs.
Yeah, very true. And then there's order handling capacity, right?
Correct.
Ashwin, kind of talk a little bit about that, because I know that a lot of folks don't use it, but it's really a great way for you to kind of say, hey, I do 80 orders a day, and once those 80 orders are done, we're moving to the next day shipment. So
yeah,
talk
no,
a
for
little
sure.
bit
So
about that.
especially, I think, just going off of what Fabiola said, for Thanksgiving and Black Friday, she said the DCs are closed. Knowing that suppose you're doing SFP and you want to come in on a Monday and start SFP again, you could have a whole lot of volume that needs to be same day to be shipped on Monday, unless you're prepped for it. So some sellers find it useful, some sellers may have grown past it, and that's fair, they have their own capabilities. But for people that want to use it, you can set a limit and have, once that limit is set based on what you can ship out on Monday, the handling time will move. So it sort of ensures and guardrails you while you're out, and you're not coming back in on a Monday to volume that cannot be shipped out on time, and then obviously impacts metrics. But there are a number of tools like that, and I think that's really important to sort of just look through them and see which ones are applicable to your capabilities and which ones will help best protect you as you scale during peak or off peak as well.
Very, very good. That's a great process and thought for us all to think about, yes, because even regularly doesn't matter if we're not in peak. So I'm going to we're almost there where we're almost wrapping up, but I wanted to ask each of you, if you really had to just give one piece of solid advice on how to future-proof your business for growth and excellence, what would that be? So Anthony, could you start?
Yeah, I think I know I'm using these innuendos and these sayings, but trust the process, right? If you have a good plan, just react on it and grow from that. And I think that's, if you think about it as simply as that, and then utilize the tools that are available to you from Amazon, measure your metrics, look at KPIs where you're having issues and build off of that, it can be very successful.
Babby?
I really like the usage of the combination of shipping settings automation and by shipping that providing protection. I think that is very important. like for us. And again, I also think like knowing your business and knowing your errors, knowing your weak points. That's the only way you are. Don't be that aggressive with those weak points. Test them, like trial and error, figure out how to solve for them, and then you can grow.
And Ashwin, one final piece of advice before we wrap up.
I think they kind of covered everything here, but using the tools, especially if it's something that you currently are struggling with, if it can help, trial it, see how it works, test it, and if it can take one thing off the table in terms of worrying about for you, it always helps. So don't shy away from trying it, and if it works and works for you specifically, great.
Perfect. Well, this has been a really great session. I want to thank all of you for taking the time today to speak with us about Fulfilled by Merchant and delivering excellence. I would say to each one of you, if you have additional questions, we've talked about SSA, HT by shipping, multi-location inventory. And then if you want a really great sneak peek into 2026, what's coming for Fulfilled by Merchant, go down to booth 52. My whole team is down there waiting for you. Very excited to talk about some of the things that we are going to launch, and they're going to walk you through that. So it's been an absolute pleasure today, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.